And yeah, we are back with another reactionary video. Of course, we are kind of neck deep into this off season, and obviously some roster changes has already dropped. And one of the first few ones, or at least the first big ones, going into the 2 week break, which is ZYK now stepping down as the main sniper and IGL for Execration in the place of Mr. Yotib. So this can come as a surprise with a lot of people considering that Execration actually had a fairly good season. Yeah, fairly good season here in Masters. They got all the way up to third. I think they did unfortunately did fall to QRD in the playoffs, but I feel like overall they did have a really good run. But I feel like their goals are a lot bigger compared to what we saw in playoffs. Obviously, Execration, with the roster that they have, you have MVA, you have Justin, you have Fallex, you have CBN. You are bound for potentially a international appearance, and unfortunately, it has been quite a while since CBN and Fallex did join Execration, and they have kind of crashed and burned for a fair few seasons. Placing third at most, which was kind of their peak. But I feel like this was kind of the one of the main reasons why this roster change did happen, right? The kind of their implosion in their series up against QRD. And granted, I feel like the entire series doesn't really fall upon the shoulders of ZYK, and I feel like we could definitely do a kind of a deep dive into it, but I feel like we can do a bit of a background behind the players. Obviously, we do know who ZYK is. Yeah, the biggest, I would say the funniest guy in the scene. That's for sure. The biggest rage baiter or giggle baiter, no matter what you see. Obviously, as we do see in the Wikipedia, he is Nice Katol's younger brother. And we obviously do know who Nice Katol is and his legacy with Execration being one of the best players ever in PH as well. I feel like I would actually place Nice Katol easily top five player all time here in PH. And don't ask me for that ranking. That's for another video. And of course, Ram's uncle, who is, I think Ram is on Ekis squad at the moment, and they did just qualify for the phase 2 of OQ. So yeah, big congratulations to Ram, man. I feel like that kid definitely next down the line of the Alde bloodline in the Philippines of being just good at Crossfire. But of course, we can't really deny that he was part of the Pacific Makta era when they dominated the mid to late 2010s here. They did get third in Crossfire Stars 2014. This is insane consistency, by the way, from Pacific back in the day, because there were some really heavy shooters from Wesley. There were some really heavy shooters from Brazil as well. So I feel like this consistency is really hard to see now, especially in the year of 2026, where I feel like the volatility is very high, despite AG still winning a lot of things. I feel like second to the very last ranking is very random right now. But yeah, just like what I said, you can't really deny ZYK's consistency when it comes to performing on big stages. He did win CFGI. You can't deny that. One of the peeps that did beat Famous in the finals. Once again, they did kind of dominate Masters when it came back in 2023. Got 2 first places, but that was kind of way before Stallions, and SGJ was still kind of the main rival here for Pacific. So they kind of did enjoy this era for a while, but obviously we do know about the, I wouldn't say downfall of Pacific. It was more like I feel like the better term here is power creep. Power creep is a term where the other characters in a video game become so buffed that the old characters get kind of phased out because of it. And I feel like the same thing is happening here for ZYK. I feel like he's still a very, very good sniper, but unfortunately he is getting power creeped by every single sniper in the league at the moment. And I feel like the same thing is also happening to KLP in my previous video. But of course, make sure to watch that one as well if you guys want to see my opinion about the Revenge and KLP changes. But enough plugging about another video. Of course, we still do have ZYK to talk about. Obviously, he will be stepping down. I'm not so sure what the role is gonna be. I think I was talking to Salvatore, and I think I forgot to ask Aljon about this. That is he gonna be coaching, or is he gonna be retired fully in this capacity? Because having known ZYK for a fair few years, you really don't know what this guy is gonna do next. So he could be now the main brains of Execration. In my opinion, I feel like MVA is gonna be calling, because he's literally the oldest guy in the group, and I feel like Yotib is too quiet to do it. And yeah, if they get ZYK as a coach, granted, you can't take him seriously at times, but when it's crunch time, he can definitely come up with some game plans that benefit your team. But I really don't know what's gonna happen to ZYK. Maybe he is gonna pull a post out and say, "Hey, I'm gonna be retired," and probably is, "I'm just gonna focus on streaming or focus on my family or something." But that really is entirely up to him. But I feel like if ZYK retires now, he really does leave a legacy of consistency and having to shift from IGL into rifler into sniper. He was basically doing everything all at once back in the day. And after ZDD left Pacific, I feel like that left a huge hole in the team, and I feel like he really filled that hole well. And the consistency was still there despite ZDD leaving Pacific back in the day for greener pastures with his work. And yeah, I feel like ZYK did a very nice job of filling that. Granted, their international results did kind of taper off a bit, and I feel like that was the time where Vietnam was really figuring out the AWM and the AKs and the M4s. So yeah, it was definitely high time for some changes to happen for Pacific. Despite the dominance, the international results weren't really coming in for them. But we are gonna be possibly, I wouldn't say saying fully goodbye to him. I feel like ZYK still is gonna stick around. That's for sure. He's not gonna be not noisy about the Crossfire scene. So gonna be looking forward to what ZYK does next for the scene. But I digress. We go into the topic of Yotib. So obviously Yotib, one of the best snipers in the regular season. I would say top 2 sniper in the regular season if it wasn't for his bit of inconsistency in the middle of the group stage. Kerdas, obviously, I feel like they did have kind of a roller coaster run in the group stage. Our expectations as casters were saying like, all right, they're gonna be a team that kind of hovers around, here-ish. And we were kind of right, but we didn't expect, obviously, what did happen in the playoffs. But we did kind of ballpark that Kerdas is going to end up at around 5, 6, 7, 8. This was really going to be tightly contested between the 4. But yeah, Kerdas, obviously, there was a bit of hope, and they did take a map off of Virtus Pro, but that was really quickly dashed when they did lose to Matches. But I feel like this was Kerdas in full absorption mode. They were like, all right, we did lose the series, but I feel like Mensky, if I'm saying that right, that is the coach, right? There we go, staff. Yeah, Mensky. Yeah, Mensky, if I'm not mistaken. Mensky, I'm gonna remember that guy. That guy was a delight to talk to. Or at least when he got interviewed by the panel, he was a delight to talk to for the panelists. So shout out to him for this entire run. But yeah, they were kind of just absorbing a lot of stuff. I feel like the first signs of them kind of being a bit of a contender team is when they did beat Fervid 2-0 in week 3, and especially this 10-1 on sub base got everybody's mouth open. They're like, what? How did this happen? How did a team like Fervid, who is arguably also contesting for the top 3 spot, can just lose to a team like Kerdas? And I feel like this really put them on the spotlight. But at the same time, in the same week, they did lose to AG. And I feel like this was kind of humbling, and I feel like this was needed for Kerdas, because I feel like if they won against Fervid and if they won up against AG at the same time, I feel like their egos might inflate by a lot, and they're gonna say, "All right, we're unbeatable at this point," and they run into week 4 and they bounce out of qualification. But I feel like this was a wake up call for Caritas to say, "Oh, hold up, all right, we can beat a team like Fervid, but if we dick around in a map, and if we kind of mess about in our series, that's maybe have less preparation or less respect for the opponent, this is the stuff that can happen in group stage." And this is also a testament on how dangerous group stage is now for a lot of the Filipino teams, because a team like Caritas, who can look like a top 4 team in one, can be beat by AG, who did get eliminated, but still you could say that AG is a team who could also kind of do damage in the playoffs, fully knowing how good Nuken is and fully knowing how good Del QQ can be in this one. But of course, the video is about Caritas, so we are gonna bounce back on this. So yep, they did get 2-0'd by Execration, and it wasn't even close. In all honesty, they just got absolutely rinsed in both maps of Ankara and Eagle Eye. But at the same time, maybe that is once again the learning process on the side of Caritas. Obviously, they clean up the rest of the competition here. I feel like the JYD realistically, could not beat a team like Caritas, obviously being a lot more structured. JYD, a bit of a mess in the group stage, but I feel like that team can definitely maybe win an impact or two. But we go into the point of playoffs now, and obviously Caritas did beat Execration. Granted, Caritas got elbow dropped in the semifinals by Virtus Pro. Ironically, one of their bigger fans in this tournament. Caritas absolutely, I wouldn't say rinsed, but they did catch Execration with some of their bad habits, and I feel like their bad habits definitely got exploited. But it was also the other way around in this series. And, well, honestly, the Execration versus Canada series probably could go down in history as one of the best series ever, period, in Crossfire Philippines, considering how close it was. The storyline was good. David versus Goliath Execration with five absolutely absolutely experienced players. They got all the skill, they got all the mechanics, they got all the hype with them, and now we got Caritas on the other side, an up and coming team. Everybody expected them to be contesting a playoff spot with Alliance and barely, scratched by 6th. So, this being as close as it was really nothing short of a miracle here for the side of Caritas. But it was also a product of their hard work, right? I feel like Caritas did a massive job of researching Execration, what they're doing wrong, what can they do to kind of exploit what kind of defensive or offensive holes that they did have. And speaking of holes, pause. But speaking of holes in the defense and the offense, there is some in the semifinals, and I am gonna have a bit of a field day with the scoreboards once again. But I feel like this does require a bit of nuance for this entire series. So yeah, so ZYK and Yotib on sub base 8-10. Obviously, it did go down the wire in some of these rounds. ZYK 15-13, not too bad of a performance, but Yotib 18-11. And this has a bit of a caveat here, or a bit of nuance for ZYK, because he really didn't do too well in the first half when it came to the offense. And I feel like that is one of the few things that they're trying to attack with this kind of change, because Yotib is a very good offensive sniper. ZYK, no offense to ZYK, but ZYK likes to play second, play third player. Sometimes he is going to go first, but it really does depend whether or not he does have a rifle and or he is on the GR side. But on the PL side, he is kind of a bit of a turret. So you are going to see, MVA, Fallex, CBN go in, and you are going to probably see Aljon on the other side of the map, or maybe in MR being the fourth guy in. So obviously that kind of sniping does work, but I feel like the impact could be squeezed out a lot more, especially when it comes to BL side. And I feel like ZYK isn't as confident with his speed compared to back in the day, because, it is evident the guy's 34. So, the guy's going to be slightly slower when it comes to firing the gun. And Yotib, I think, Yotib, I think, is the perfect, somewhat one-to-one for ZYK, with the exception of leadership. But Yotib has the exact same, kind of aggressive fights or he has the same aggressive fight picking as ZYK. So Yotib, you can kind of send him into MR. Hey, let's get a pick, maybe with your TRG. Maybe we can get the LR guy real quick, the passage guy. Maybe you can get the second mid guy with the sniper, and he is gonna send it there, and will try his best to get it. And mostly he does get it because his percentages on the BL side is actually pretty good. And I think I do remember looking at the statistics that his BL numbers on snipers is kind of way better, but I have to take a look at that again. But obviously, this also comes with the caveat that ZYK also played rifle in some of the rounds because that is the thing with ZYK. Hey, the sniper's not hitting. You're kind of 3 and 7. Let's swap to the EBR. However, when it comes to the GR side, weirdly enough, ZYK really starts fragging out. And I feel like that is where the issue lies here for the side of Execration, where ZYK, he is an amazing, I wouldn't say amazing GR sniper, but he is a very good anchor sniper. You can kind of plop him on one side of the map. You can leave him alone there, and he's going to manage to maybe get one, maybe get two, maybe get some delay going, and get some impact on the other side of the map. But I feel like with his skill set being I wouldn't say exclusively on holding angles, he does, get some opening picks from time to time. He gets some aggression, but I feel like you get a bit more consistency with Yotib with those kind of kills. And, ZYK, obviously, the adjustment is really good to go on the EBR, especially going into the later rounds where, the TRG, in his eyes, you only need it to kill Yotib, and the rest of the team can kind of just pick up the pace with the EBRs. And I noticed this a lot with ZYK, especially when he is on the BL side, where as soon as he gets the first kill with the TRG, he immediately drops it for the EBR of the opponent that just dropped it, and, will look for a man advantage somewhere else. So I feel like, that style can definitely work, but unfortunately with the snipers going into 2026, I feel like the, live or die by the sniper star player role is definitely well needed. And I feel like as the IGL, ZYK is occupying a spot that is definitely, very frag dependent or very frag heavy needed. You need your sniper to kind of pop off in the map like sub-base. Granted, it is going to be mostly medium range fights because, you're fighting players running through woods, running through passage. At most, the long range fights are going to come from whether or not you peek passage into machine room or whether or not you go into shutter and, fight the guy outside. But feel like Yotib slightly just outsniped ZYK here. ZYK, obviously, with some very nice adjustments, but I feel like most of his damage was done with the rifle and with the GR side sniper. However, I feel like the lack of presence on the BL side really does create a bit more difficulty for Fall X, CBN, Justin, MVA to create openings here, and I feel like that is a reason why, Paul went 3 and 14, because he has to run into the sniper of Yotib, and he doesn't miss in this series too much. I feel like he missed like 4, 5, 6 times. But yeah, this guy barely misses. So when Yotib is solidly 18 and 11, and your Fall X, you're just running straight into enemy lines, and unfortunately, he couldn't get too much going. Props to CBN, man. CBN is a freak of nature, bro. 19 kills, 14 headshots, and talk about consistency, bro. We need to talk about CBN soon, but that is for another video. But Yotib, once again, slightly just outplaying ZYK here, but ZYK, once again, feel like more of the impact does come from the defense, but. We are going to go into Ankara. ZYK, all right, I'm going to be honest here. This looks bad. This looks bad for ZYK, but I feel like this is a bit justified for ZYK, considering that, He was kind of the more aggressive sniper in this map. BL side, he was kind of doing the same thing, actually. On the BL side, he was still kind of the overseer of the team, but Yotib 16 and 11, despite you having Justin, MVA, Fallex, CBN on your back 24/7, you still produced a 16 to 11. Yotib was also kind of doing some rifle work as well, and I feel like that is also kind of checks the box here for Execration. ZYK, what do you get from him? You get a good opening sniper and a good defensive sniper who can rifle. But Yotib is a good defensive and offensive sniper who can rifle. He just doesn't have the leadership. Leadership can't be taught. Leadership can't be taught, or leadership can be taught. However, talent cannot. So, you don't have to teach Yotib to be a leader. MVA is right there. I think he's ready to kind of lead the charge for the team. So, moves is starting to make a bit more sense now. But yeah, I feel like ZYK actually didn't snipe too bad in this map. He actually caught Yotib a fair few times. But yeah, I feel like Yotib, this was just a display of if your back is against the rope, you can always fall back on your sniper to at least get an attempt going on a map like Ankara. But this was... oh. There we go. Map of Port. Port was interesting. Not gonna lie, Port was interesting. I know 7 and 17 ZYK. Not gonna lie, kind of played bad. On the BL side. GR side, played okay-ish. I think I feel like he was rifling a lot more. And what is surprising about this Port, and a lot of people are going to be surprised by this, the riflers actually led more of the charge in this map compared to the snipers, because a lot of the fights were kind of corralling more in LB, more in mid side, and obviously first half, I think it was more on the score here of the BL. So, or no, it was actually just an equal fight here on the 6-3. If I'm not mistaken, on the very tail end of this one, I feel like Yotib got a really, really sick kill, but I'm going to have to review that. But at the same time, the grander scheme of things in this game, that MVA, Fallex, CBN, Justin popping off at the right time, getting some really good entries, but Yetcha absolutely was holding down B-side like his life depended on it, and Yotib as well. Yobs kind of fell off a bit, but kind of brought it back in overtime. But Yotib really picked up the slack for his team. Having EBRs in his pocket as well. On the retake, he wasn't really afraid to be the first one to push, the first one to make space. And at the same time, he still had that sharp mind, that sharp sniper in his pocket, just in case that the team does need it. This is the kind of star power that Execration needs in a star role like the sniper. And this is what I was talking about, the sniper meta in 2026 in the KLP video, where the snipers are going to have to do a whole lot more compared to just anchoring, compared to just the usual things that we see from the sniper, kind of just sitting back and everything. The snipers have to go for openers. Sometimes you have to rifle, sometimes you have to support, and sometimes you have to be the second guy in. And I feel like the best second guy in sniper is Yotib. So it does make sense, once again, that this change happened. So, I was going to talk about the second half, I think. So, yeah, the first half, ZYK actually did pretty good in the first half. Actually, scratch what I said earlier. ZYK did pretty good in the first half. Was actually getting some of the members here. I feel like Yobs was kind of tilted after that first half. But when the second half turned, when QD was on defense, look at what Yotib's doing. Man was kind of down in the first half, but when he got in the second half, he's like, hey, all right, I need to be immediately a spark plug for my team. What is a spot that Execration attacks 24/7? It is gonna be CA. And Yotib, obviously, he's like, I got you, homie. I'm going to get CA control for you. And it's actually a really good spot for a sniper to stand in, because if you get the second kill here, you get the immediate move. If there's someone in mid, you can move on CA, maybe get some information. You can go back into LA. It gives you so many options. And Yotib, obviously, immediately gets the one. And that immediately threatens Execration, right? It creates uncertainty here for Catwalk A. And it kind of creates this fear of taking CA as recklessly as they did earlier, because the next few rounds, actually, Yotib went back to top A, and Justin was playing Catwalk A the entire time, and Execration was kind of just testing this alongside, but they couldn't really go forward on Catwalk A. Even though they had control, they really weren't sure where Yotib was holding. So Execration having to work so much just to get some A information and really created a bit of a struggle here on their port map, which I think really did result in their defeat in the next half, because not gonna lie, BL side was okay-ish for Kerdas, but at the same time, oh, I'm looking at the wrong score. Oh, spoiler alert. But at the same time, you can't really ignore QD. When they need to lock in, they lock in. And I feel like Vincent, big credit on the reset for the team in this one. But yeah, just like what I said, Yotib, impact immediately felt on the map. And the fact that this is his first year is crazy to me. At least first year competing in Masters, and he's already this good and this hungry and this stoic as a player, right? Really does create a lot of value for his stock, and his stock was definitely the fastest rising stock in 2026 when it comes to the Crossfire player side, at least in the Philippines. So I would say Yotib heavy favorite, or I feel like definitely my vote for Rookie of the Year. I think it would have been Jay Kim, but I feel like he did kind of have a bit of a downturn in terms of performance here when it came to the playoffs. But yeah, that, once again, that topic for another video for Jay Kim. But yeah, I feel like Yotib, with this kind of performance, this is the type of performance that will just give you Rookie of the Year, especially knowing the implication that this is playoffs. But yeah, we go into New Mexico. I'm gonna keep it 100 with you guys. I'm gonna keep it truthful. Mexico is a map that is so bad for snipers that ZYK started rifling, Yotib started rifling as well, but he was really trying to make the TRG work as much as possible, but he was just having a hard time. He was not really too keen in CQC sniping or CQC options, and I feel like Execration were a lot more well prepared for this New Mexico pick, considering 4 of the players on this team, were on, or not 4, 3 of these players on this team were on Pacific Macta, and they did know how to play New Mexico, or at least Mexico in general. So they weren't really strangers in this one. Plus, they have CBN. So, the guy was a demon in New Mexico back in the day. But, what can you do about this, man? It's New Mexico, high variance. And, ZYK actually played pretty well. Big props to him. But it's New Mexico. I don't really rate the map anything analytically. Maybe it does display that you are better in CQC, but at the end of the day, New Mexico is a map where, if you don't win your first 2 fights on the BL side, you really is lost. So, really not much depth when it comes to that map, and yeah, really don't like it. But we go into the decider. And this is, once again, another surprising thing. Despite Yotib being 24-12, and despite ZYK being 10-17, ZYK has some very good impact in the first half here for Execration. Actually, did have a hard time in that GR side, if I am not mistaken. Sniper is very hard to pull off a new compound. So I did see ZYK kind of doing the exact same thing as he does. Get the first pick and then get the EBR right after to kind of bolster the firepower with the additional rifle. But the lock-in here from Yotib, man, holy 24-12 performance in a Game 5 to qualify for the semifinals. This is a situation where you either crumble or the pressure turns you into a diamond. And Yotib was shining really bright in this Game 5. I mean, you give him an EBR, he could do it. You turn him into an anti-fragger in the B side, in B pillars, he could do it. He has to be the support for his teammate in mid. He could do it. You could be the backside tower anchor. He could do it. This was probably what sold Execration about Yotib, because he was doing basically everything, anything a sniper could do on New Compound, a map where famously snipers really do struggle. So it really is nice to see that, we have players as young as Yotib perform in a final like this, still being stoic once again, and the expectations really do not phase the kid. So Yotib obviously has a mission, and the mission is possibly to be the best sniper in the Philippines. And I really do respect that goal, because you're going up against the greats in PH. You have the Revenges, you have the KLPs, you have the Zetras. I think Yotib is also trying to put his name in the top spot, and I really do want to see that future, because I feel like Yotib really does fit the mold of the modern sniper here for Crossfire in 2026 and beyond. With the TRGs, you have to be fast, you have to be a Swiss Army knife, and you have to be everything for your team. Granted that Execration will lose a bit of leadership. ZYK, obviously one of the most creative players in the scene. I feel like his very aggressive macro, especially when it comes to GR side, it being slightly reactive. You get one kill on one side of the map, the other side of the map starts attacking. I feel like ZYK did kind of popularize that. I feel like maybe he did get that from another region, but he really did make that really well known here in PH. And I feel like his style of calling will definitely be studied in the future. I feel like he kind of created a lot more proactivity in the region compared to before, where we're doing a lot of sitting and everything. Aljo and ZYK came in and kind of mixed everything up, and made a lot of the more aggressive moves, at least for PH, a lot more possible. So big shout outs to ZYK. I feel like he's had a bigger impact in PH Crossfire than what people think. And he's still a guy that you kind of look for. You kind of look for and say, hey, where is ZYK? Hey, ZYK might be the solution for this problem. Maybe you need an IGL, maybe you need a rifler or a sniper. But ZYK gonna be a guy that we'll be remembering for a while. But we have to get used to this picture. Yotib in a Execration uniform. Execration, a team that likes to gamble every offseason, and I feel like this is probably their biggest gamble yet. And I feel like if they do not make it with this roster at the end of the year, if they do not make it to CFS 2026, if they do not make it to EWC, I feel like it's slightly more fine, considering the time frame is a lot more shorter. But if they do not make it to CFS 2026, the future of Execration really is uncertain. In all honesty, I feel like they've tried time and time again to create a team that can compete with the top two. And obviously, we've had names come and go. And, this is probably, their best attempt at saying, all right, this is finally the time that we will compete internationally and we will contest international play. And hopefully it does happen, because, the Stallions Virtus Pro Monopoly or a duopoly here in PH could be a lot more short-lived than expected, considering how good teams are now in the Philippines. But that is it for me. It is a blazing 45 degrees in the Philippines, and I am absolutely sweating. And and the off season just keeps on getting hotter and hotter. The roster moves, a lot is going on. I heard Kim is now on Atras and MZ is back on Fervid, but that is gonna be a bit of a preview for the next video. But that is it for me. I will see you guys next time.